You all can learn from my mistakes. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the Bridgewater Town Council meeting to order. It is Tuesday, April 26, 2022, 7:02 p.m. We could all first rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Just a reminder, this meeting is being aired live and recorded. We do have a couple of condolences this evening on behalf of the Bridgewater Town Council to the family of Ronald Gelfie upon his passing on April 5th, 2022. Mr. Gelfie served the United States Army, Company C, 2nd Armored Rifle Battalion, 3rd Armored Division, in the Republic of Germany during the Korean War. He was also an employee of the town of Bridgewater as a coordinator of buildings for many, many years. On behalf of the town council to the family of Salvatore Colombo upon his passing on April 10th, 2022. Mr. Colombo served in HQ Company, 1st Battalion, 2nd Armored Division, United States Army during the Korean War. I'd now like to take a moment of silence for all those veterans and first responders who have passed. Okay, first item on our agenda this evening is approval of the minutes from our previous meeting, April 5th, 2022. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Any discussion? Seeing none. Just for the public at home, just make sure your mic is on green. I'm told they will not be able to hear you on Zoom or Facebook. Okay, I'll move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton.
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
and Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. Next item on the agenda is announcements from the president. I would only just remind fellow councilors that on our next council meeting, I believe May 10th, we will reorganize. Moving on to proclamations, we have none. Moving on to citizens open forum. I'd ask any citizens one at a time to please come to the mic, state your name and street, and you have 3 minutes. Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Kevin Walker. I live at 233 Main Street. I'm here actually to discuss National Grid with you. You had a meeting that you had some questions for National Grid probably about 6 months ago. They have guy wires coming across the street on Main Street. They tie into a tree in my yard. The tree's dead. We had branches hit the neighbor's house, our house, and you had a couple questions for National Grid that they forgot about or didn't answer, and that's why it was still lingering around. The questions were basically, can you replace the pole and make it deeper on the side of the road that it's on? And I have pictures if you want to see them, but the answer is no, because we're right across the street from the 40B that's going in. And one of the roads that's coming out for the 40B is basically 4 or 5 feet to the right of where the pole is. So they can't get a guy wire in there. The only way to do it is to put a pole on the other side of the street. So it's running from the utility pole here across Main Street into my tree. They want to put a pole in the grass strip and just take the guy wires and stick it in a new pole on my side of Main Street. That way I can get my tree down and I don't have branches crashing through the, the roof like it has been for the past few months. So I don't know if you need an actual representative from National Grid here. If you want to take a walk out there one of these days, I can meet you out there. It'll take 2 minutes to look at. I've got pictures if you want to look at them. It's up to you. But I'm hoping, I don't know if you can give the okay to National Grid based on what I'm speaking about today. But if not, I wanted you to be aware that I'm trying to get these trees down for almost a year. And it's becoming a bigger problem every day. National Grid dropped the ball. I spoke with their representative again the other day. He said, oh, I need to have this stuff in by Wednesday. I'm like, no, that was last Wednesday you needed to have stuff in. So that they're just not getting it. And the answers to your questions are very simple. They cannot put guy wires in on that side of the roadway because of an existing house and fence that are there and a roadway that's going to be built there. So it really needs to come across the street. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walker. Any other citizens for Citizens Open Forum?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vernon Domingo, 36 Saddle Drive, up at the NIP. I'm speaking here tonight just in support of a resolution that will be discussed at this meeting in recognition of Pride Month this year. Last year, we had this done in Bridgewater, and it was a wonderful opportunity to show that this town is inclusive and caring and welcoming people. And so I want to applaud council for considering this. I know it's up for discussion tonight, and I hope it passes. I hope it passes unanimously, because this is the type of town that we really want. For me, as a parent of a transgender child, this is particularly important. We need to welcome people in so that we become that larger family that we all want, that is diverse and really interesting. So thank you very much for considering this, and I hope it passes tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Christina Ajabian, 221 Aldrich Road here in Bridgewater. And I'm also speaking in support of the resolution about Pride Month. And I'm also want to speak about the resolution which has come before you about Juneteenth. We're also celebrating Juneteenth in June. And if you remember, it's a celebration of liberty and freedom that was declared in Texas after a general, I forget his name, I think his name is General Gordon, found that the enslaved people did not realize that they were free. And so after 2 years, and it became a day of celebration. It's celebrated every year. It's a joyous occasion, and we had a very successful Juneteenth celebration, our first annual last year. Some of you attended. We had wonderful attendance, wonderful celebrations with food and music and some education. It was a wonderful time, and we're doing that again this year. So we'd like very much to have your support via a proclamation, making it a day of celebration. And you're invited to attend to our ceremony, if you approve it, on June 15th, when we raise the flag, the Juneteenth flag. And so I hope that you all will support that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Beryl Domingo, 36 Saddle Drive. And I'm here to speak on behalf, I'm speaking on behalf of the Planning Committee for the second annual Bridgewater Juneteenth Celebration Committee. It's a long title. And I'm very pleased to see that Councilor Rushton will introduce a resolution tonight honoring Juneteenth. I believe it's very important to commemorate American historical events that are of great significance. And Juneteenth is such an event. And I hope the town of Bridgewater and you will honor Juneteenth by voting to raise the Juneteenth flag in mid-June. I think Chris provided the date, June 15th. And we would like to invite you, of course, to the second annual Juneteenth event. It's going to be at the First Parish Unitarian Church on Saturday, June 18th from 3 to 6. And it's going to be a lot of fun, lots of music, and we hope to see a lot of families there and you. So we thank you for your support for this important event. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other citizens for Citizens Open Forum, we'll move to appointments. First appointment A, Andrew Parks, Cultural Council, 2022 to 2025. Referring to the town manager on that.
Mr. President, Mr. Parks volunteered to join the Cultural Council. He's got plenty of experience in Bridgewater. He is very involved in the board with Music Alley and has offered to contribute his time to Cultural Council. So I would encourage that ratification.
Excellent. Thank you. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion for the town manager? Seeing none, move for roll call vote.
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton.
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
You just-
9 in
thank you.
favor, 0 against. Sorry.
No worries. Moving on. Next, Kayla Newcomb, Cultural Council, 2022 to 2025. Defer to the town manager.
Mr. President, again, Ms. Newcomb has volunteered her time. She has not served on any boards or committees in town, but is a proud graduate of Bridgewater State University and resident of town and anxious to get involved in the arts and culture. So I would encourage your ratification as well.
Okay, entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion for the town manager? Seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton.
Yes.
Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Dr. Perry.
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Moving on, next item on the agenda is F hearings. First item at A is, it is 712 petition P 2022-018, the granting of a flammable and combustible liquids license. This measure has been duly advertised for public hearing in the enterprise and abutters have been noticed. I'm going to go ahead and open the public meeting. It is 7:12. And I'll ask first for a presentation. I assume it's from the town manager.
Mr. President, this is a routine change in manager for, in this case, for the 99. And the,
No, hold on, you're a little
I'm
ahead
sorry,
of
am
us.
I 2 steps ahead?
We're in the hearing for the flammable and combustible
Oh,
liquid
yeah.
license.
You don't want to give a alcohol
Give it
license.
to the 99.
My apologies. Yes, the petitioners requested the storage of flammable and combustible liquids under Mass General Law. The threshold is just exceeded for having to get a council approval. If you look on the map that adjoins the petition, you can see the placement of the propane tanks, mostly to supply propane or fuel for the generators that they have or will have on site. And just for public consumption, it's 2,480 gallons total. That's the aggregate quantity of all liquid propane gas to be stored on site.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any general questions from the public? Since they can't zoom in, I assume not. Do we have anybody from the public speaking in favor? Do we have anybody in the public speaking in opposition? Okay, any questions from the council?
Mr. President,
Council George.
through you to the town manager, and I'm looking through the checklist, correct me if I'm wrong. Was there anything notice sent out to any of the butters for this? And if not, why?
I just
I-
said that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but butters were notified.
They were
Yes.
notified? Okay. Maybe I read it wrong. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the council? I have no question other than to say it's an extremely reputable business that's been doing business for a number of years in Bridgewater. I'll go ahead and close the hearing. It is 7. Sorry,
But
go ahead,
my
Council George.
apologies. So through you to the town manager, so looking at the forms, a butter letter to be mailed, it has an NA on it. So was a letter,
I'll defer to your council clerk on that one.
They were mailed. The only abutter that they have is the company, which is within 100 feet.
within 100, okay.
Yeah. So they're the only abutter.
Okay. I don't expect them to. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome. Go ahead and close the hearing. See if my iPad will tell me the time. It's 7:15. Okay, entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Seeing no further discussion, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Rushton.
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. Moving on, G, license transaction. First item is petition P 2022-019, change of manager, 99 Restaurants of Boston LLC. I'll defer to the town manager.
This time, this is obviously the council has seen change of manager requests before. This is fairly standard and has been approved by police department and internally as well. They are proposing to change the manager from Cindy Medeiros to Kendra Carley, and there is no reason not to permit that.
Okay, thank you. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Have a second. Any discussion? Counselor George?
No.
No, okay. All right, move for roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton.
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. Next item H, presentations. We have none this evening. Moving on, item I, town manager's report. First item is the Mitchell School update.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have a whole lot to report on the Mitchell School, which is good. I can tell you that we're at the point where lighting is being installed throughout the classroom spaces. Plumbing fixtures are actually being installed. The main backflow preventer is going in conjunction with water department inspections. HVAC controls are going in. Terrazzo is being installed in the first floor lobby level. Millwork is going on. Outside sidewalks are being prepped for pouring and curbs are being set. Playground is being installed next week if all goes well. There are some delays on the elevator, but we trust that the parts supply will be, the parts will be in next week in order to complete that task. And the OPM and the site contractor so far have worked pretty well with the senior center to make sure that programs don't get interrupted when the site contractor comes in to do their work on the road. So that, knock on wood, all is going fairly well.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions from the council? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, Mbta zoning.
I will grant a little bit of time to our Community and Economic Development Director, Jennifer Burke, DeVobriand, sorry, in a few minutes, but I'll introduce this only by saying, I think most of the council knows that in January of 21, there was a new section 3A added to chapter 40A, which is the state zoning act, which requires that MBTA communities have at least one zoning district of reasonable size in which multifamily housing is permitted as a matter of right, and then meets other criteria set forth. So one of the things that we have to do is make sure that the council hears sort of the overview of this. That's actually a requirement that we have to meet by May of this coming month. So with that, I will ask Jennifer just to give you an overview.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening. This afternoon, I sent you all a memo via email. I have copies here. If you haven't received it, I'm happy to hand out those hard copies as well. As Michael indicated, last January, the governor passed a law that said that any MBTA community was required to enact zoning that allowed for multifamily housing as of right. And then there were certain stipulations which we'll go over. There is a penalty for communities that don't do that. And the penalty is that you will not be eligible for certain grant funding, which includes MassWorks, Housing Choice Initiatives, and the local capital project funds. And then it also gives DHCD the discretion to not award certain discretionary grant funding as well, if you're not in compliance with the statute. So that's just something to keep in mind going forward as we work through this process. So some of the key points that I just want to go over. The law was enacted last year, and then DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development, was assigned the task of coming up with guidance for all of the communities. There's 175 communities, of which we are one, that qualify, and there's different levels of qualification. So there's obviously subway communities, where community, adjacent communities, and that means that we have to have 15% of our total housing stock. The maximum density of the district has to be at least 15% of our total housing stock, according to the 2020 census. So I did the calculation based on our current housing stock, and that's 1,243 units. I don't have the 2020 census calculation yet, so that potentially could go up. So the other items that is in the draft guidance that we need to just be aware of. So the multifamily housing district must allow multifamily housing as of right, which means it can't be a special permit. It can't be, you know, any sort of permit that requires more than just a site plan review. That's all it can require. It can't include age restrictions, and it has to be suitable for families. It can't restrict the number or size of bedrooms, the size of the units, or the number of occupants. And it has to comprise at least 50 acres in total, the land area of the zoning district. Now you can also achieve this through an overlay district, but if you do that, it has to have at least 25 contiguous acres. It can't be like 5 acres here and 5 acres there and 5 acres there. You have to have at least 25 contiguous acres in the overlay district. You can also include previously developed multifamily housing within the zoning district. So we could look at what we already have, including Waterford Village, places like that. If we tweak that zoning a little, that might qualify already. So there's things that we could do with what we already have existing. And the important thing to know is this legislation is not requiring us to produce more housing or create the actual housing. It's just requiring us to have the zoning in place. That's all it's requiring. So that's the important thing to note as well. Just really quickly looking at my notes. So site plan review can be required, but it can only regulate vehicular access and circulation on site, architectural, building design, and screening of adjacent properties. You cannot use it to deny the project or impose conditions that make it infeasible or impractical. And then again, housing production is not mandated. Compliance only requires the adoption as of right zoning. So how do we achieve this compliance? So there's 3 steps. This is a 3-step process. This is the first step, making a presentation to your legislative body, which is you all. In this first year, everybody complied. Now going towards the second year, in order to comply, by the beginning of May, we have to do a presentation to the legislative body and then certify that we've done that we don't have any districts that qualify currently, but that we will work towards a plan. So once we do that, they will qualify us. Then prior to, the date's correct, July 1st, 2023, we have to provide a action plan and timeline to do either planning studies and community outreach to adopt a multifamily district and provide that to DHCD. They have to approve that plan, and then we have to work towards that plan. So by July 1st, 2023, we have to come up with a plan. How are we going to do this? Give that to DHCD, and then they provide us with, yes, that works for us, start working on it. Then by December 31st, 2024, we have to adopt the zoning amendment. So that gives us, if we get to come up with the plan by July 1st, 2023, that gives us basically 1.5 years to come up with the zoning amendment and work through that plan. And then within 90 days of adopting the zoning, we have to send everything to DHCD for certification. And then our certification is good for 10 years. And then we have to re-up it every 10 years. So that's generally the guidance. Now, the guidance is in draft form. DHCD took comments from various groups and communities and planners and developers and all different kinds of people up through March. They're working on finalizing their guidance, and we expect to see the final guidance sometime this summer. So I wouldn't anticipate any movement towards anything until we see final guidance. But I wanted to get the presentation in front of you, get this information in front of you so that we could at least initially qualify. And then as a community, we can decide how we want to proceed. So that's what I have. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Counselor Columbotus.
I imagine this will be a lot of work for your department.
I imagine it.
So do you envision needing more staffing to undertake this?
Without knowing what the final guidance is yet, that's hard to say. You know, I mean, obviously more staffing is always helpful. But, you know, I would wait to see what the final guidance looks like before I make any of those decisions.
Yep.
Thank you, though.
Counselor Wood.
Thank you. Mine's a multi-part question.
Sure.
So in the past, let's say 5 years,
Mhm.
with the grants that you've talked about, how
Mhm.
much money out of those grants has Bridgewater received?
So I can recall we did $3 million for MassWorks,
Which is Elm Street.
Elm Street, that's correct. We've done 280,000 under Housing Choice for water main on Curve Street. That's all I can think of off the top of my head of those ones. But I know going forward, we have talked, before all this came out, we did talk about potential MassWorks grants for other projects in town. So I know there is that potential.
Sure. So as I read the memo, the housing needs to be within a half mile of the train station.
It needs to be within a half mile of the train station, and they define that by the property boundaries owned by the state.
So, and this isn't a joke,
Mhm.
are we asking BSU to move? Because that's a lot of land around the train station. Or are we going to be able to move the train station into the central business district, which already has 18 units per acre?
Right. All good questions and not anything we've really discussed or thought about. You know, there's always been conversations about the train station moving it, not moving it, because it's not in an ideal location for commuters as it is.
Right.
So those are all things that we can talk about.
And the last question is, other communities are not moving forward with this
So I've heard.
because they believe that the economic impact of the grants is less than the negative economic impact of the change required by the state.
Mhm.
So there's no other penalty for not moving forward if we decide to do that, right?
Currently in the guidance, the only penalty is not being eligible for the grants. There are some communities that, so we are a housing choice community, so we are eligible for those funds. So there are some communities that aren't a housing choice community and aren't eligible for those funds anyway. There are some communities that don't apply for MassWorks because it is an intense process and it's a difficult application process. So there are communities that have just decided that, correct?
Okay, good. Thank you. A lot to think about.
Thank you. Counselor Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jennifer, the proposal of Broad Street and potentially the other proposal at Perkins Foundry would not fall within the guidance of this to meet those goals?
Currently, no, because we require a special permit for those approvals, and this has to be by right, which means no special permit.
So where would we identify the land then? It's pretty condensed in that area. How would we come up with the acreage?
Yeah, so we could do a couple things, right? We could look at that zoning district, the central business district, where we already allow a heavier dense area by special permit and talk about whether or not we want to tweak that a little bit and say, okay, if they want to put, because it's 15 units per acre is the requirement under this new law. We allow 18 units per acre. Well, let's change it and say, if you want to do 15 units per acre, you can do that by right. If you want to do 18 or more, you need a special permit. So we could make tweaks like that. So I think it's a bigger studying of our zoning not just where is the land.
Well, technically, the MBTA station is not on town property,
Right, it doesn't
right?
have to be.
It doesn't have to be.
No, no, the area just has to be within a half a mile of the district, of the station.
Well, I'm just saying, we're not really the host of the commuter rail. The university is, as
Right.
far as us having to have to comply with that.
It's not, it's the community itself, because the station is in the community. It doesn't matter that we host the station or not. The station is in town. There's a lot of
State.
towns that don't have any transit, but because they are next to a town
Next to
that
it.
has transit, they have to comply with this.
It's
as
quite a
well.
mandate. It's quite a mandate they're
Mm.
putting on.
That is true, yeah. And unfunded, I might add.
The best kind.
Thank
Do you
you.
know how many acres are at Waterford Village? Does it have exceed 25?
I believe it does, but off the top of my head, I don't know the exact number.
That could be handy.
Yeah, that is, I think, one of the areas we're kind of focusing on at the moment, if we go forward.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody want another hard copy of my memo?
Sure. I'll take a copy. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on. Next item is J, discussions. We do not have any listed. Next item is K, committee reports. Defer to any committees that would like to provide a report. Council Moore.
Thank you, Mr. President. So quick update on rules and procedures. I think if everyone remembers, back in February, we had a discussion about the charter changes. In that discussion, we decided to prioritize 11 of the, I think, almost 90 proposed changes that were in there. All 11 have moved through the committee at this point. We are looking to get some final legal advice on the versions that are coming out of committee. And assuming that passes, that bundle would be ready to go back in front of the council in one of the upcoming meetings. Questions?
Any questions from the council? No? Okay, as I've mentioned to Council Moore, if we need to hold any additional workshops to help plow through some of those items, more than willing to do that as a council. Okay, moving on, legislation for action. First item A, order 0 FY 22-057, transfer order contract funding. Budget and Finance are meeting on 4/26 prior to the town council meeting. The Finance Committee voted 7-0 to recommend. Do we have a vote from the Budget?
3-0 to recommend.
Budget and Finance voted 3-0 to recommend. Defer to the town manager.
Mr. President, this order funds contractual obligations for the past fiscal year. And obviously encourage the council to support that.
Okay, thank you. Entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George, Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
Dr. Perry.
Yes.
Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Rushton.
Yes.
Mr. Souza.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Wood.
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, moving on. Item B, ordinance D, FY 22-023, revoke MGL Chapter 44, Section 53F.5 Golf Enterprise Fund. The Budget and Finance Committee met this evening and
Vote is 3-0 to recommend.
voted 3-0 to recommend.
Can I make that motion?
And the Finance Committee voted 7-0 to recommend. Defer to the town manager.
Mr. President, as I mentioned in first reading, this order abolishes the enterprise fund for the golf course. And later, I don't believe it's on this agenda, but later we'll be asking you to vote a new account, the appropriate account for the structure of how the golf course is managed currently or will be managed for the next fiscal year. The funds in the currently existing in the Golf Enterprise Fund will be transferred to the new receipts for appropriation account. But the reason that we would want to abolish this and move to receipts for an appropriation account twofold. One is that this is what the auditors recommend. And secondly, the enterprise fund is designed to be the financial bowl in which you conduct a business. We're no longer conducting a business. We are simply hiring a management company to conduct that business. So there's no constant inflow and outflow of funds, so that the enterprise fund is no longer appropriate.
Excellent. Thank you. Councilor Wood.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah. If I may.
Council Wood.
So excuse me. So I thought the other one was on the agenda too. They go hand in hand, as the town manager said. We had a good, healthy discussion during the committee meeting about the access of funds and things like that. So parts of the discussion are that we'll have, when the golf course without the enterprise fund pays the town, the council will accept the money and it would go into this reserve account once we get to that place, which I thought was on this agenda, which will be next. The council then will be responsible at the request of the town manager, for example, to use those funds. And one of the initial uses would be paying off the bond for the clubhouse, for example, that's due. Going forward, if there's excess reserves, and I said this in committee, one of my hopes is that that funding, when it doesn't support the golf course, is supporting recreation, parks and recreation in general, which is why originally, and people may not remember this, we moved the golf course organizationally underneath Parks and Rec. And so that becomes a funding process for that. And we also suggested and talked about, we don't have any context yet, but maybe what we need to do additional work is to put together a policy about how we dip into that account so that it's pretty clear, what the rules of engagement for that are. So we're not spending it on, something that we don't want to spend it on, or it doesn't just become free money that people think we can spend freely, but it's entitled to use for specific purposes. So hopefully everyone will support this, because the second piece fulfills those goals.
Thank you, Council Wood. Any other further questions? Seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton.
Yes.
Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Dr. Perry.
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher and Mr. George. 9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, moving on. M, old business, we have none. Moving on to N, new business. First item A, order 0 FY 22-058, acceptance of a library grant. Defer to the town manager.
Mr. President, the library has secured two different grants, both designed to offset the cost of some of the work involved in developing a veterans historic collection and display. And I would encourage you to accept both those grants.
So I entertain a motion to refer to Budget and Finance Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, move for roll call vote.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
Dr. Perry.
Yes.
Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Rushton.
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Wood.
Yes.
And Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Moving on, item B is order 0 FY 22-059, contractual buyouts. Defer to the town manager.
Mr. President, this is what you've now grown used to. This is retirement payouts for mostly sick buyback contractual obligations.
Okay, excellent. Entertain a motion to refer to the Budget and Finance Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, move for roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
Mr. Wood.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Rushton.
Yes.
Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Dr. Perry.
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
And Mr. George.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Moving on, item C, order 0 FY 22-060, contractual buyouts, Old Scotland Links Golf Course. Defer to the town manager.
Again, Mr. President, very similar. These are the expenses related to wrapping up our operation of the golf course.
Entertain a motion to refer to Budget, Finance Committee.
So moved.
Second. Have a second. Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, move for roll call vote.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
Dr. Perry.
Yes.
Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Rushton.
Yes.
Mr. Souza.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Wood.
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, moving on, item D, order 0 FY 22-061, transfer order, diff debts, service pay down. Defer to the town manager.
Mr. President, this, if you recall, the council set up a DIF, which is a district infrastructure financing mechanism to fund the Elm Street project. And this is the transfer of monies from the DIF, from the sort of the separate bowl itself, in order to pay the short-term interest and the ban that is currently payable.
Excellent. Entertain a motion to refer to Budget and Finance Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, move for roll call vote.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Rushton?
Yes.
Mr. Souza?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Item E, Order 0 FY22-062, rescind loan authorization for district. Defer to the town manager.
Mr. President, this rescinds a portion of the borrowing authorization for the Elm Street project because we don't need it.
Entertain a motion to refer to Budget and Finance Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, move for roll call vote.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Rushton?
Yes.
Mr. Souza?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Item F, Order 0 FY22-063, transfer order, water High Street treatment plant transfer. Defer to the town manager.
Mr. President, this transfers $2,200,000 plus from water retained earnings to the Water High Street Capital Project. As we had outlined the financing, this was anticipated in order to offset the cost of construction that was not eligible for SRF funding.
So entertain a motion to refer to Budget and Finance Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Souza?
Yes.
Mr. Rushton?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
And Mr. George?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Moving on, item G, Order 0 FY22-064, transfer order, sewer treatment plant transfer. Defer to the town manager.
Mr. President, very similar to the water transfer, we are planning on using $2 million of both betterment fund and retained earnings in order to finance a portion of the sewer upgrade. And I will point out that this cleans up the sewer betterment fund, which we had determined was never properly accounted for. So we actually had surplus funds in that betterment account. So it cleans up the balance sheet somewhat and also helps fund the wastewater project.
Excellent, thank you. Entertain a motion to refer to Budget and Finance Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, move for roll call vote.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Rushton?
Yes.
Mr. Souza?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus? 9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, moving on, item H, Resolution RFY22-007, a resolution in recognition of Gay Pride Month. Councilor Rushton, as you members of the council see in their packets, submitted a resolution in support of residents and resident groups. And as you see in the resolution that is next after that, supporting and honoring Juneteenth. This is in a compromise of flying the flag for the first 14 days of the month. And entertain any questions from members of the council. Okay, seeing none, I'll move on. Item I, Resolution RFY22-008, a resolution honoring Juneteenth. Again, as you see, is this resolution as submitted, splits the month in half. I do want to make an amendment under the fifth whereas, refers to the flag being flown in June of 2021. I don't believe that to be accurate. This would be the first time, and instead of flying it for the day, would fly it for the second half of the month of June. And I would ask for council support and if there's any questions from the council. Okay, seeing none.
We
Oh,
haven't made- we haven't
Council
made a
George.
motion on the amendment.
Sorry, thank you. So I'll entertain a motion to strike the fifth whereas in June 2021, the town of Bridgewater raised the Juneteenth flag in front of the Academy building during the third and fourth week of the month in honor of the emancipation of those who had been enslaved in the United States. So,
Second.
any discussion? Seeing none. Okay, move for a roll call vote on the amendment.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Rushton?
Yes.
Mr. Souza?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
And Mr. Columbotus?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. Moving on, item J, Resolution R FY 22-009, a resolution supporting the Fair Share Amendment. Councilor Rushton, again, to my fellow councilors, in your packet is a resolution supporting as a council the Fair Share Amendment. This is going to be the second attempt by the Massachusetts legislature to put this as a constitutional change to tax accountability for those incomes over $1 million, in which it would earmark 4% over the million to specifically target education improvements pre-K through college. So higher education is included in that, as well as a number of Commonwealth infrastructure improvements throughout the state. We're not voting on this evening. We'll come back to the council.
Make a motion to move to Budget and Finance Committee.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second, the discussion.
Sure, second.
I just, is this something that nearly needs to go to committee? Usually resolutions do not.
Sure, but this is a pretty big policy for the town. And although it doesn't directly impact the town, it is financial policy. And I think the Finance Committee specifically and the Budget and Finance Committee should have time to discuss it.
President,
Council George.
through you, I would respectfully disagree with that in regards to the resolution. If this does become law, then I think it would come to Budget and Finance, but I don't see it needing to go to Budget and Finance Committee.
Okay,
I think there's a ballot, isn't there a ballot question in November on this issue?
Yeah,
there is.
Yeah, so I don't,
Well, then why do we need a resolution? It's not town policy. It would be,
It
it
could
would be
be-
a ballot.
I mean, I think
Just
supporting,
supporting it.
if we vote this resolution, we're supporting, in my opinion, we're supporting the ballot question.
that is the intent of the resolution.
Communities in the Commonwealth have taken this action.
Sure, I don't think, personally, it's a policy of the town to support this. And I think I would like to hear from the Finance Committee to see what their take on this particular action is.
Okay, so we have a second on the motion to refer to the Budget and Finance. We've heard a discussion that seems to be quite a divide over whether or not there's a financial impact on the town of Bridgewater versus this actually being a resolution to support the ballot amendment. So I'm going to go ahead and move on the actual motion to send to Budget and Finance. So that's what we're voting on now. If we could call for a roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Souza?
Yes.
Mr. Rushton?
No.
Mr. Chase?
No.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
No,
And Mr. George?
No,
5-4.
In favor of the referral?
5, yes.
Okay,
5 in
so it's going to
favor,
move to Budget and
4
Finance.
opposed.
Okay. Okay, moving on. Item K, Resolution R, FY 22-010. Apologize. We're at Resolution R, FY 22-010, acknowledgement of acceptance of remediation waste at Maryland's Landing and Reclamation Project. Defer to the town manager.
Mr. President, this acknowledgement or resolution is a request from DEP to confirm essentially what this council has voted a number of times. We do have counsel for Maryland's Landing here if there are any questions, but I would encourage you to refer it to Community and Economic Development Committee.
Entertaining a motion to refer to the Community and Economic Development Committee.
so moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Does the attorney representing this resolution want to make any statement at all? You don't have to, but since you're here, if you could just come up here, just state your name.
I'm here to answer any questions that the board may have, that the council may have about this project. As the town manager said, this council has voted in support of successive measures that we have requested DEP to approve. And in this instance, we're requesting an approval of a really a different flavor kind of soil to bring into the facility. And same criteria that's been applicable to all the other approvals that have been issued. But if there are any particular questions, I'm here to answer them.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for coming in tonight. Any
Sure.
questions from the council? Okay, seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
Dr. Perry.
Yes.
Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Rushton.
Yes.
Mr. Souza.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Wood.
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, moving on, ordinance D FY 22-024, zoning ordinance, zoning map amendment, Main Street. Counselor Souza.
Yes, when we did the redevelopment of the downtown, they changed the zoning on a large section. What happened was the several properties, 6 in fact, that we're going to discuss this evening, they actually split the land right in half. 96 Main Street, the people who were buying it want to tear down a house, put in a mixed-use building in there, but they wanted to use the lot, the backside of their land for parking. And under that change that was made, it remained residential, so they can't use that. So they're not going to have adequate parking to do what they're looking for. I submitted a ordinance earlier to change that, and it was discussed and said that was spot zoning, and we really shouldn't be doing that. So we took a second look at it, and there are 6 locations, 6 parcels of land connected to that, that had been split in half, or not half, but they would split, okay? And so we come back in here, and this ordinance tonight is to, of course, we pull that other one out, is to take these 6 parcels and change them all so that the whole piece of land is mixed use, not half or partial is mixed use and partial is residential, so that it can conform to what the idea of the rezoning of the downtown was. And that's just what we have. And I believe you all have a copy of the map. You've received it with your thing tonight. And you can see them outlined there in the yellow. There's 6 right there. That'll show you the pieces of property.
Excellent. Thank you, Counselor Souza. Entertain a motion to refer to the CEDC and the planning board.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Counselor Moore.
Through you, just a quick question. I don't know if anybody knows the reason it was originally split, but if that's information that we could hear.
Yes, when I checked into it, what they said was maybe we didn't do a really good look at the parcels. We had a point over here, and we had a point over here, and we drew a straight line. And it just split those parcels in pieces. Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Okay, seeing none, move for a roll call vote.
Mr. Columbotus.
Yes.
Mr. Wood.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Souza. Mr. Souza.
Yes.
Mr. Rushton.
Yes.
Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Dr. Perry.
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
And Mr. George.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, moving on, citizens' comments. Any citizens wishing to speak during citizens' comments?
Quick thank you to
Just
council. for
your
supporting-
name first.
Vernon
and the
Domingo,
sec-
Saddle
thank you.
Drive, 36 Saddle Drive. Again, I commend council for making us proud of our town with those 2 resolutions on Juneteenth and raising the pride flag. So we invite you all to do that in the summer. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. Seeing none, we're going to move to next item is council comments. Counselor George.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, nice to be back in the same room. Little bit different configuration, but nice nonetheless. I'd like to mention that this Saturday from 9 to noon, we will be having a townwide cleanup. And we have a commercial partner that's going to help with that as well. And I'll be working with Councilor Gallagher. So if we could, the weather looks good. I've been watching the weather almost every day. So if people could come, and even though it's 9 to noon, we don't expect people to be there for the full time. If people can put in an hour, and even if it's later in the day, I think it'll make a major impact to the town. So I hope to see everyone there. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Gallagher.
Yes, it's great to be back here after 2 years, sitting behind our desk at home, behind our cameras. I think this is Counselor Moore's first meeting as a counselor in the council chambers, right?
Saw
After a
my
whole year.
fancy plaque.
Very good. I also want to take a couple of minutes just to congratulate, first of all, the town manager and the council president for the work that they and others have done to make sure that the word about the new fire station was out there. The information sessions that they held was certainly beneficial to inform the voters of what was being presented and what the needs are. And I think because of that, I think that we should be proud of an overwhelming number of voters supported the debt exclusion. And I think that that's certainly a project that we can all hold our heads up for over the next couple of years, as that now gets to be built for our fire department. And I want to congratulate all the other residents that voted and the candidates that did run for office. There was a contested race on the school committee side in both Bridgewater and Rainham. And the fairly close election. And I hope that those that were successful do a good job in the reasons why they ran, and those that were not successful, I hope they continue to try to be involved in the community. And again, as Councilor George said, please come on out Saturday morning and help out for an hour or so and help clean up certain areas of the town. It needs it as we head into the summer months. And I hope to see you Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Gallagher. Counselor Perry.
Thank you. You stole all my thunder. No, that's okay. Also want to echo the same sentiments. A big thanks to all the Bridgewater voters that supported the fire station project. It's obviously much needed, and look forward to having this hopefully up and running in the next couple of years. And again, echo the sentiments that to the town manager and our council president for their tireless support of it. And I think it certainly made a difference at the polls. Yeah, I definitely want to congratulate the people that were elected, Kathy Martelli and Louis Diamarino. Welcome to the school committee, and I hope you do a wonderful job in your new roles. Thanks to all those that ran against them. It was good to have a contested race to bring voters out to the polls. And then also congratulations to all those reelected to the library trustees. Thank you for your continued work there. And I'm also very happy to be back here in person. Hopefully we get to continue this on a regular basis, and hopefully nothing derails us going back to the old ways. But that's all I have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor Perry. Counselor Chase.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I'd also like to thank Counselor Gallagher and Counselor George for taking the lead with respect to the town cleanup. I know that in the past, it's been a very well-received effort and drawn a lot of community support. I think it's a very valuable volunteer effort, and I salute you for your work in that regard. I was very encouraged by the vote on Saturday to approve the debt exclusion for the new firehouse. And I think the turnout was quite convincing, and I think it was a very compelling vote that voted in favor of that action. So I thank all the voters. I certainly thank our council president for his leadership in that regard. And I think that all of the volunteers of the ad hoc committee did a wonderful job. And now we move on toward actually seeing the realization of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Chase. Counselor Souza.
Yes, just want to thank everyone for approving that fire station. What made me decide that we needed it is how old is the building? And that was a question that a lot of people asked. And one gentleman in town, who's a historian, showed me a picture of the original building, which is still there, and all the additions were added to it, with a horse-drawn fire pumper, water pumper coming out of the door of that station. That's how old the original building was. So thank you for voting on it. And one more thing, if I may, to Mr. Gallagher, where are we meeting on Saturday?
The Town River Landing.
Town
Down by
River Landing.
BTV
Thank
studio.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Souza. Council Moore.
I think echoing a lot of what's been said already. Thank you to everyone who volunteered to make the voting possible. I was in the parking lot for a while and saw a lot of people active, supporting their candidates, and then a lot of volunteers making sure that it was a good experience for the voters. So thank you to everybody. I would echo, I think being new to the council, I'm still sort of learning how things happen in town. But one thing that stands out, and I was incredibly impressed with, is the fire station. I think for me, that was an example of what the town can do when everybody rallies around an idea and really pushes it forward. So thank you to all the volunteers who made that possible, and thank you to the voters who voted it in. I was also excited to see Juneteenth and Gay Pride Month on the agenda. So thank you to our council president for adding that. And I'm excited about the cleanup. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Moore. Council Wood.
Thank you. Thank you guys for setting up the cleanup. I'll be unavailable, but be with you in spirit. And I'll pick up a bag of trash on my walk tomorrow.
Very good. That helps. That'll be good.
And we have a lot of trash. I think it's trash trucks, not litter bugs. Couple things. I had to vote absentee ballot. Hopefully everybody remembered to do that. That was going to be out of town. I was in Houston with the first robotics team. Like 396 other teams, we did not win, but we had a good time competing, and the team structured well. Some of you may have seen a post, actually put together a diversity and inclusion goal for next year, which is to raise the number of female students on the team to 40%. I think that's an achievable goal. Need to get out there to get the word out to come and check out the team. Everybody's welcome. There are no bench warmers. There's no JV team. Success is you show up and participate. The fishing derby for the Lions, just to cover all the bases, is going to be May 7th at Skeeter Mill Pond. Now, some of you may be aware that the property changed hands recently, and we've had some really good discussions with the current homeowner, and she's willing to do the derby again. So all we ask is that when you come in, which I don't really have to ask this, but when you come onto the property, just be cognizant of, take everything with you that you show up with. Don't leave anything behind. Be polite to everybody, and have a great day. It's going to be a good fishing day. And then finally, this Thursday from 1 to 4 at the Alternative Compassion Services on Elm Street, there's a certification, recertification parking lot pop-up. And it's sorry, come on. Here we go. And this is a good opportunity for people who may have questions about becoming a patient of ACS to come by and schedule a certification or for a very low price, and to learn about some of the benefits of medical cannabis. Thank you. It's Thursday, 1 to 4.
Thank you, Councilor Wood. Councilor Columbotus.
I just want to express my appreciation to you, Councilor Rushton, for your initiatives on the resolutions for Gay Pride Month and the Juneteenth celebration.
Thank you. And the bad part about going last is you've all said everything I wanted to say. Other than I will say, in reference for me, at least with the fire department, I appreciate everyone that came out on that day. The only thing I had been asking for is citizens to come out and vote, and just make it an informed vote, know what you're voting on, know all the information. I just want to say a thank you to the town manager, Kimberly Williams, Guilfoyle Productions, that helped us with organizing a lot of the events. Brad and the IT department in town, certainly the fire chief. I don't want to miss Tom Levy, the previous fire chief who started originally on the committee. All of the committee members. It's been a collective team effort, not just one person, but as a collective team. And I think we worked very well together, as you see as the results of this vote. And I'm looking forward to the next several years of seeing that building actually go through all of the stages of construction to completion and moving the fire department in there. Thank you. Next item is going to move into an executive session. I'll entertain a motion now to move in an executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21(a), to discuss a strategy with respect to litigation. We're discussing the matter in open meeting will have a detrimental effect on the bargaining unit or litigating position of the public body, and to adjourn from executive session.
So moved.
Second. Okay. Move for a roll call vote.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yeah.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Rushton?
Yes.
Mr. Souza?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Columbotus?
Yes.
And that's it. 9 in favor, 0 opposed.
People. Take 5.
Take 5.